In an unexpected political turn in Turkey, Devlet Bahçeli, the leader of the Nationalist Movement Party, made a surprising proposal regarding the imprisoned leader of the PKK terrorist organization Abdullah Öcalan. Bahçeli, who is known for his hardline stance against Kurdish separatism, called on him to make a public declaration to end the PKK's armed insurgency. In exchange, Bahçeli hinted that the terrorist leader might be offered parole or a pathway to freedom if the PKK disbands. This statement has sent shockwaves through Turkey's political landscape and has garnered both support and strong opposition. The remarks come at a politically charged time in Turkey, where tensions around Kurdish-Turkish relations have long been fraught. His proposal is seen as a major rhetorical shift for his party, which has historically been staunchly opposed to any negotiations with the PKK or Kurdish political movements. Many observers believe that this statement stems from the upcoming elections and expectations for constitutional changes. The aim is to obtain Kurdish votes for the constitutional changes that President Erdogan wants, along with the fixed nationalist votes in the elections. The reactions to the proposal have been varied. Nationalist politicians and opposition figures, such as Mansur Yavaş of the Republican People's Party, condemned the idea, accusing the Nationalist Party of undermining Turkey's national security and appeasing terrorists. On the other hand, pro-Kurdish groups including the Dem Party cautiously welcomed the move, viewing it as a potential opening for renewed dialogue and for lifting the terrorist leader's isolation, which has been in place since 2019. The nationalist leader insisted that his proposal is not about reviving a peace process similar to the one seen between 2013 and 2015, but rather about forcing the PKK's total surrender. In his view, the terrorist leader should be used to disband the PKK as part of a strategy to eliminate Kurdish militancy once and for all. This strategy has raised concerns that the nationalist agenda could be aimed more at consolidating political power than at finding a true solution to the Kurdish question. The AKP, led by President Erdogan, has supported the proposal, though political analysts suggest that the timing could indicate that the statement is part of a broader strategy within the ruling coalition. The next steps remain uncertain, but it is clear that the remarks have reignited debates over the terrorist leader's role and the future of the Kurdish conflict in Turkey. Erdogan said, "We hope that the historic window of opportunity opened by the People's Alliance will not be sacrificed to personal calculations. As the political institution, parliament, civil society, press, academia, and the nation as a whole, we want to build a Turkey without terrorism and violence. The state exists for the nation and to serve the nation. The stronger our party and our alliance are, the stronger Turkey is. But if we are weak, Turkey will be weak." The Kurdistan Workers' Party was founded in 1978 by Abdullah Öcalan as a Marxist-Leninist militant group aiming to establish an independent Kurdish state in southeastern Turkey, a region the Kurds refer to as Kurdistan. This area spans parts of Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran, and Kurds, an ethnic group with their own language and culture, have long struggled for autonomy and recognition in each of these countries. The roots of the PKK can be traced back to the historical struggle between the separatist Kurds and the Turkish state. In its early years, the PKK focused on revolutionary socialist principles and Kurdish nationalism, employing guerrilla warfare and insurgent tactics to pursue its goals. The PKK officially launched its armed struggle against the Turkish government in 1984, and since then the conflict between the PKK and the Turkish state has resulted in over 40,000 deaths, including civilians, PKK terrorists, and Turkish military personnel. The conflict has profoundly impacted the political, social, and economic landscape of southeastern Turkey, leading to significant internal displacement and loss of life. The PKK leader has a fame of baby killer. Initially, the PKK's primary demand was the establishment of an independent Kurdish state. However, by the 1990s, the group began to shift its focus from outright independence to seeking greater autonomy and political rights for Kurds within the framework of the Turkish state. This change in strategy was partly influenced by the terrorist leader's capture in 1999. After his imprisonment, he issued a series of statements calling for a political solution to the Kurdish question and proposing the idea of democratic confederalism, a decentralized model of governance that emphasized local autonomy and cultural rights over statehood. Democratic confederalism advocates for a form of grassroots democracy that allows for self-governance at the local level. It promotes the participation of diverse ethnic and religious groups in decision-making processes. The PKK began to adopt these principles, moving away from its Marxist-Leninist roots and toward a more libertarian socialist framework. By the early 2000s, the PKK's demands had evolved to focus on securing cultural rights for Kurds, such as the right to education in the Kurdish language, recognition of Kurdish identity, and greater political representation within Turkey. The group also sought an end to military operations in Kurdish-majority regions, and the release of political prisoners, including the terrorist leader. The PKK's struggle for Kurdish rights has extended beyond Turkey's borders, involving connections with Kurdish movements and other groups in neighboring countries as well as foreign states. One of the most significant international relationships the PKK developed was with Syria. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Syria provided support to the PKK, allowing it to establish training camps on its territory. The terrorist leader himself lived in Syria until 1998, when Turkish pressure on Damascus, backed by the threat of military action, led to his expulsion. Syria's support for the PKK was part of a broader geopolitical strategy to pressure Turkey, particularly over water rights in the Euphrates River. On the other side, Soviet support extended indirectly through alliances with countries that backed the PKK, which provided safe havens and logistical support for PKK militants operating against Turkey. Furthermore, the Soviet Union's tacit support allowed PKK members access to training and supplies via third-party networks within the socialist bloc, contributing to its foundational strategies. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, PKK operations shifted, adapting to new geopolitical realities in a post-Soviet landscape. The PKK also established a strong presence in northern Iraq, where it has maintained bases in the Kandil Mountains. These bases have served as strategic locations for the PKK's attacks against Turkish forces. However, the presence of the PKK in Iraq has complicated relations between the Turkish government and the Kurdistan Regional Government, which governs the Kurdish region of northern Iraq. While the government does not officially support the PKK, its ability to control the group's activities in the region has been limited, leading to periodic Turkish military incursions into Iraqi territory. The Syrian civil war, which began in 2011, provided another opportunity for the PKK to extend its influence. The Democratic Union Party and its armed wing, the People's Protection Units, which are closely affiliated with the PKK, emerged as powerful actors in the Kurdish regions of northern Syria. The YPG played a crucial role in the fight against ISIS, receiving support from the United States and other Western powers. This relationship with the US has been a source of tension between Turkey and its NATO allies, as Turkey views the YPG as an extension of the PKK and a terrorist organization. Beyond the Middle East, the PKK has also received some support from leftist and socialist movements in Europe, particularly in countries with significant Kurdish diaspora populations, such as Germany, France, and Sweden. However, the PKK is designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the United States, and the European Union, limiting its ability to gain official political support from Western governments. The first significant effort by the ruling government AKP to engage with the PKK occurred in 2009 with the so-called Kurdish Opening. This initiative aimed to address some of the long-standing grievances of the Kurdish population by granting more cultural and linguistic rights. It also led to a reduction in military operations in the southeast. However, this opening was met with skepticism and backlash from Turkish nationalists, leading to its eventual collapse. The most notable and formal peace talks between the AKP and the PKK began in 2013, when Turkish intelligence officials initiated direct negotiations with the terrorist leader. This period, often referred to as the solution process, was a historic moment for Turkey, as it marked the first time that the government openly sought a peaceful resolution to the Kurdish question. During the talks, the terrorist leader called for a ceasefire, and PKK militants began to withdraw from Turkish territory. The peace process involved a broad range of initiatives aimed at addressing Kurdish demands, including constitutional reforms, greater recognition of Kurdish identity, and efforts to integrate Kurdish political actors into the national conversation. The process also included the formation of the Wise Persons Committee, a group of intellectuals and civil society representatives who were tasked with promoting dialogue and support for the peace process across Turkey. However, the process unraveled in 2015. Several factors contributed to its collapse, including increasing violence in the southeast, a rise in nationalist sentiment, and the shifting political landscape within Turkey. The failure of the peace talks coincided with Turkey's growing military involvement in Syria, where the PKK-affiliated Syrian Kurdish group, the YPG, became a major player in the Syrian conflict. The Turkish government's concerns about Kurdish autonomy in Syria added another layer of complexity to the peace talks with the PKK. By mid-2015, hostilities resumed, and the Turkish state launched large-scale military operations against the PKK. The collapse of the peace process marked a return to a cycle of violence that has continued to the present day. Despite occasional suggestions of resuming negotiations, including from Kurdish political actors, the Turkish government has largely abandoned the idea of engaging with the PKK, opting instead for military solutions. Turkey's military operations in Syria have primarily aimed to counter threats from groups it perceives as terrorist organizations, particularly the PKK and its Syrian offshoot, the YPG. Since 2016, Turkey has launched several major incursions, including Operation Euphrates Shield, Olive Branch, Peace Spring, and Spring Shield, focusing on removing the YPG from the border region to create a safe zone for refugees and curbing the influence of Kurdish-led forces in northern Syria. Ankara asserts that these operations are necessary for its national security given the PKK's long-standing insurgency within Turkey and the group's ideological and operational ties to the YPG. As Turkey deepens its role in Syria, it has also reshaped the regional dynamics, strengthening alliances with Syrian opposition groups while complicating relations with the United States, a key backer of the YPG in the fight against ISIS. Turkey's incursions in Syria have put significant pressure on the PKK, impacting its strategies and operational capabilities. By establishing a military presence and pushing the YPG southward, Turkey has disrupted the PKK's logistic and recruitment channels, cutting access to a supportive base in northern Syria. This shift has forced the PKK to reorient its operations, limiting its access to cross-border supply lines and safe havens. Moreover, Turkish operations have fragmented the YPG-controlled territory, weakening the PKK's influence and complicating its ability to mount coordinated efforts against Turkey. However, these incursions have also spurred regional tensions, particularly with the Syrian government and Kurdish groups, creating a complex security environment where the PKK may seek alternative alliances or adapt its approach in the broader Syrian conflict. The recent comments by the Nationalist Party leader have once again brought the PKK into the forefront of Turkish political discussions. While the call for the terrorist leader to end the PKK's armed struggle represents a significant rhetorical shift, it remains unclear whether this proposal is part of a broader strategy for peace or a political maneuver aimed at consolidating nationalist support. The history of the PKK and the failed AKP-PKK peace talks highlight the deep-rooted complexities of the Kurdish conflict in Turkey. Although there have been periods of dialogue, the lack of sustained political will and the rise of nationalist sentiment have made a lasting resolution elusive. Whether the proposal will lead to renewed discussions or further polarization remains to be seen.